During the actual session, I forgot to do screen shaving. During the actual session, I forgot to share the screen. So I'm re-recording this, and I also replaced the missing slide from this morning's recording. So what we're going to talk about in this recording is why you might want to think about creating videos for your classes. One important factor is that it creates a sense of instructor presence and immediacy. It makes the students feel more connected to you rather than someone who's sitting working alone, isolated from the rest of the class and from the instructor. Just your visible presence on the screen, talking to them, creates much more of a sense of connection. And there's a lot of research that shows that that increases student engagement, student success, and student performance in the class. It also tends to humanize the instructor so that the students see you as a human being in your environment and wherever you're recording this. But it's no longer just this external person sharing things with someone with them in Blackboard. It's a more human connection where they see you, they hear you, they hear your voice, and it just makes it a little bit, it presents you as a human being in a way that might not come across just in text and over email. It also can be used to provide multimodal instruction, which is instruction in multiple media. Much of the content that students will get will come from reading text, their textbook and so forth, but by providing supporting videos, instructional videos and so forth, you're giving students another way to connect with the material. And that visual media can be fairly effective, and it can enhance the instruction that they find in other content areas. It's also a really quick and easy way of addressing common misunderstandings. That if you find when students are working remote or online that there's something that's confusing to one student, it's likely going to confuse many students. And if they're all emailing you, you can spend a lot of time answering each student individually. Or if you create a video response, you can provide a way of addressing the problem that works for all students. And they see you responding to them, and it may take a few minutes longer to create the video than it does to create individual email responses. But if you have many students sending you the same question, a video could actually be more efficient and can let you use your time more efficiently, as well as letting students use their time more efficiently. And also, if you're recording your facial expressions and they're hearing your voice, they're getting some visual cues and some audio cues that tell them a little bit more about what you're saying. One of the things we know from quite a bit of research is that when anybody reads things in text, they're more likely to misinterpret things in a negative direction, taking things as being a negative comment that wasn't intended in that way. That's much more common for text responses than it is for audio or when you're talking to someone, because you get to read the person's body language, their tone of voice, and so forth. So these audio responses or audiovisual responses can help clear up a lot of misunderstandings that might occur if you're only interacting through text-based discussion boards and email and so forth. So the equipment you need to provide some basic audio includes a laptop with a web camera or a mobile phone or tablet, possibly with a mini tripod if you're going to be recording yourself when you're in a fixed position. Optionally is the possibility of a better quality mic. Something as simple as the headphones with a microphone built in that comes with most smartphones can often improve the quality of the audio. Because one of the problems if you rely on the microphone built into the laptop or even the mobile phone's audio is it doesn't have a very wide frequency response, and it's designed basically for phone calls, and it doesn't create the best representation of your voice. If you want a really decent microphone, a fairly good microphone, you could buy one of any number of USB microphones that work on your desk, or you could get a mixer and some professional microphones. You don't need that, but if you want to upgrade something beyond what you already have in your laptop or in your mobile phone or tablet, probably the most important thing to upgrade is the microphone. And the reason for that is when students are asked to measure the perceived quality of videos, video quality doesn't matter as much as audio quality. So upgrading the microphone can be fairly inexpensive, and it can lead to much better quality videos. You may also, this is not as important, but if you want to get a webcam that's better than the one built into your laptop, you can do that. You could also use a video camera, or if you already have a DSLR that records videos, you could always use that mounted on a tripod for recording videos. In terms of video editing software, if you're using an iPhone, an iPad, or a Mac, an Apple product, you could use iMovie, which for the last 6 years, I believe, has come free on iPads and iPhones, and I think it's always been free on a Mac. And that gives you reasonably powerful and easy to use editing software that you don't have to pay anything extra for, which is nice. If you're working on an Android device, you could use one of the most common products used is Adobe Premiere Clip, or you could use, if you're using an iOS device, iPhone or iPad, if you prefer the audio product, you could use the Adobe Premiere Rush on iPhones and iPads. They have a few more features than iMovie, and they're pretty easy to use as well. You can also search for best free audio editors on Google for an iPhone or for an Android phone, and you'll get a list of others out there. And there's quite a few good free products out there. If you're working with either a laptop or a desktop with a webcam, or if you're using an iPad or an iPhone, you could use Panopto to record directly from the device. And because we have a site license for this, the use of this is free. It's not the most powerful. It's perhaps one of the least powerful editing softwares out there, but it does give you the ability to trim the beginning and the ends of videos, or to slice things and trim bits and pieces off of segments and then move them around a little bit. It's this really clumsy interface, though, compared to pretty much anything else. But if all you want to do is trim off a bit here and there in a video, it's reasonably easy to do. Perhaps the most common app that's used for recording video is Screencast-O-Matic. And because that's web-based, it will work on pretty much any device that has an internet connection. It's typically used on laptops. I believe it also works with Chromebooks. And there's a free version of it. And the free version is limited in that you're limited to 15-minute videos, which is probably not a bad practice anyway. And you're also limited in that it puts just a little tiny logo in the corner, noting that the video was created with Screencast-O-Matic. But many people use the free version. If you want to get rid of the little logo or record longer videos, or access and have automatic captioning, or access their library of other materials, you could pay at either the $20 or I believe the $40 a year level, and then you will get a much wider array of additional services. But if you want to try it, it's probably the most commonly used package out there for simple recordings. And it gives you a little bit more editing capability than Panopto. Adobe Premiere is something that you can get through CTS on our campus by contacting the help desk. And it's a really powerful teacher. It's one of the most powerful video editing packages out there, but it does have a bit of a learning curve. So if you want to do some really sophisticated video editing where you're going to work with multiple cameras and mix them together and cut from one video to another in the middle of a scene, it does that superbly. That's the most common way in which I've used it in the past when we've recorded keynote speakers from multiple camera angles and then we want to cut back and forth or pan to the audience or something similar. Adobe Premiere has all those capabilities and far more. It's got some really powerful editing capabilities, but it's also a little bit more to learn. Although you can use it even at a basic level with not a lot of difficulty. It's not much more difficult than iMovie or many of the other packages. So if you really want to have a lot of power, I would go directly to Adobe Premiere. And we do have the LinkedIn Learning videos available to help provide information on how to use all of its features. And there are thousands of videos that other people have posted about doing specific things with Premiere. Camtasia is the package I actually use the most because it combines a lot of the power of Adobe, although not quite as much, with really simple use. It's really easy to add images, voiceovers, to add questions into the middle of a document, to embed questions, and to do all sorts of other things in a video, but it's not free. I think the initial one for educational users is somewhere around $150 for either the Mac or the Windows version, and then new upgrades come out, which for the life of the product you get free updates, but there's a new one every year, and the upgrade price is quite a bit lower, but it is still an additional cost. I've been using it for about 17 years now, I think, 15 years or more at least, and I've really enjoyed using Camtasia because of its ease of use, and it's basically designed for the types of things that academics tend to do. Now, what types of videos you might create? One that I'd recommend for any class that's going to be offered in an online or a hybrid or remote format is a welcome video. Introduce yourself to students, welcome them to the class, give them an overview about what they're going to learn in the class, what's important, why is this class going to be really helpful in their continuing development, and telling them a little bit about what they'll be doing in the class, and try to get them interested and engaged and excited. Let your own enthusiasm for the subject come through in that video. You could also use videos if there's live events with appropriate social distancing taking place that you want to record. If you want to record some protests or demonstrations or speeches or public events of some sort, or if you're out in the field and you want to record things in the field, or if we move to a remote circumstance and you want to do some type of a lab experiment, you could record that using a smartphone or a DSLR or something similar. Or you might want to demonstrate something. If students are going to be using software and you don't have them in person in a computer lab setting or with their own computers there, you can demonstrate how to use various software packages or tools by creating a short demo video that they could work along with. Probably the most common use of videos for instruction, though, are screencasts, where you're recording the screen and sharing it with them as a replacement for classroom lectures or demonstrations of software, or to provide students with feedback on something that they've done. Many faculty, when students turn in papers or drafts, instead of writing up notes on it, they'll do a quick recording that's only shared with the students. Now, one question that comes up is, and you've all seen videos with talking heads, is whether or not you should include your head on the screen during the video. The evidence on that is a bit mixed. On the one hand, when there have been studies of this with students being shown instructional videos, having a talking head increases the focus, the amount of time their eyes spend focused on the screen. That's a positive thing. It helps prevent distraction. And it also creates more of a sense of immediacy, and it provides visual cues to support the auditory cues that they're receiving from what they're hearing. And so they're getting to see your face, and again, it creates more of a sense of your presence or immediacy, as I just said. But one problem is they do tend to focus on your talking head, which at times could be distracting. If you want them to focus on something important on the screen, for example, if you're illustrating chemical bonds, you'd rather have them, while they're hearing you explain it, focus on the image. Or if you have complicated equations or analysis on the screen, you want them to focus on that and not focus on watching you talk to them. So a good practice is use this only when it doesn't detract from more important visual representation. So many people will start with a short video of them where you can see their video, and then from then on, it's only the voice. Or there might be a talking head for most of the discussion, But when you get to complex visual representations, you focus only on that in the screen. Now, because audio is so important, it's really important to have a quiet location to record. It's useful to have, it's very important also to have good lighting from the front. And avoid sitting with bright light behind you. This was one of the most common problems, as many of you have probably noticed during Zoom sessions with many people. If someone is sitting at a desk with a window behind them or a bright light behind them, that tends to wash out the person's face. So try to arrange for situations where if you're going to record near a window, face the window during the recording if you can arrange that, or put a curtain down or drapes down or something to block the bright light behind you. Now, if you really want to get sophisticated, there's lots of information online about using 3 or 4 point lighting systems with a little bit of side lighting, back lighting, top lighting, and center lighting. But as long as you have good lighting from ahead, from in front of you, that illustrates your face and makes it clear, and so you're not dark or blurry or indistinct, that's generally adequate. Now, an interesting thing is having some clutter in a room improves sound quality. I've been staying at my childhood home to help my mother out with some doctor's visits and so forth during the second week of workshops here. And I'm staying in a room which was my childhood bedroom, where there are hardwood floors and pretty much bare walls on 3 sides. And that leads to a bit of echo. You may hear that here. I know when we've recorded podcasts, that's been a bit of an issue, and I've had to use a de-reverb filter to remove some of the echo. But while cluttered in terms of having books around or bookcases or carpets or even wall hangings or other things, you want to avoid backgrounds behind you that are going to distract from what you want students to focus on. So, if you have an open window and there's squirrels running across it, people are going to be watching the squirrels perhaps and not paying attention to you. One of my colleagues at FIT talked about how he was doing some Zoom conferences, and he had some artwork when he was taking a figure drawing class, and people were spending more time focusing on the nude painting behind him than on what he was saying. So he moved that painting a bit later. So some general advice. You can find some videos that are tremendously sophisticated where people spend a lot of time and a lot of care and multiple takes recording very high quality audio, where they've done some really nice production values with really good transitions, or they might have animations on the screen and do some really sophisticated videos. But if you're going to use videos to communicate with students, you might spend 4 or 5, 6 or 12 hours creating a 10-minute video. That's not sustainable. You're not going to be able to do very much if you put that much time into it. Students appreciate the connection, they appreciate the assistance, and they really enjoy videos created by their instructors. You can find videos created by other people, but students generally find more of a sense of connection when they get to see you, their instructor, talking to them. That's much more effective than someone else's instructor talking to them, although those videos can be useful supplements too. So keep the videos simple. Don't worry about making perfect productions. Make sure that you illustrate the main points. Keep the videos fairly short and focused. Students are more likely to watch the entire video if it's fairly short in duration, and it's also easier for them to go back and find it when they need material. It does, as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be perfect. Having wandering pets, or if you cough or sneeze, can be humanizing. If you flub a few things, as I've been intentionally doing as evidence here, it makes it seem more like there's a human on the other side. So it's okay to make mistakes as long as you get the points through clearly. Be enthusiastic when you're talking about your subject. Sarah Rose Kavanaugh, in her book, The Spark of Learning, and much of her earlier research, talks about how important instructor emotions are in creating a positive environment for students and encouraging students to be successful. It's also helpful if, as part of that process of humanizing yourself and trying to build a growth mindset for your students, if you use examples about where you applied something from the class, something that you're learning, or when you first discovered it. And students always tend to respond really well when you talk about challenges you faced in your learning. Let them know that, we all had to struggle with some of these concepts when we first learned them. That tends to be really positive for students. When you build a video, if you're talking about something in your subject matter, it's really helpful to start the video with something that will provoke their curiosity. That's really effective in encouraging learning, to motivate students to learn the material and to essentially prompt their brain to put it into storage for later retrieval. Use stories whenever possible. Use narrative. We respond really effectively. Sorry. As an example of an unpolished video there, use stories because that's the earliest way in which we communicated information, and we shared our history and knowledge through storytelling. We respond really well, and our brains are trained, basically, or have evolved to respond to stories. So use those stories and narratives to help students make connections. Some other advice: using examples with emotional impact can stimulate learning. So those could be positive or negative, but if there's an issue that involves some type of an emotional response, positive or negative, using that can help can prompt learning. Negative emotions actually tend to make connections that are even more likely to be remembered, but by providing that type of emotional connection, it tends to increase the amount that people recall. Provide immediacy cues. Let students know you're interested in their learning and their success. Tell them that you're concerned about this issue because this is a common barrier, and let them know that you're there to help them and so forth. So talk about the problems they're likely to face and give them some strategies to address that. And let them know that you're supportive, you want them to be successful. When you share videos, don't upload them into Blackboard. Just store them in the cloud somewhere and either link to them or embed them in the LMS. So at Oswego, you can use Panopto or YouTube or Ensemble. We're encouraging Panopto and YouTube because during the transition to remote, all of our Ensemble video storage space was overfull, and we have to pay more to use more. Panopto and YouTube don't have any limits, and it doesn't cost the college more to upload more. So use those. Both Panopto and YouTube have advantages. Panopto can be automatically embedded in your class. YouTube can be used anywhere, and it's easier to use in multiple classes. Vimeo is another storage that has more options over control, and some people choose to use that, but it's probably a little less common. Once you have the video, you can get embed code and place the videos in an announcement in the course, which gets emailed to students, or you could post an email link. But if you're putting it on a page for, let's say, one of your course modules, it's probably better to use the embed code because they can see the beginning screen of the video, and all they have to do is click play. If you put it in a link, they have to click on the link and go to whatever source and then play it. So having it there ready to play makes it just seem a little more salient, and it's more likely that students will watch it. Make sure you caption your videos to meet accessibility requirements. YouTube is probably the most accurate, but it doesn't break up things into sentences. Panopto captioning isn't quite as accurate in terms of word accuracy, but it does break things down in terms of putting things into sentences with punctuation. A few resources I'd like to share is a podcast that we did with Karen Costa, where some of these suggestions come from. Some of them come from over 25 years or so, 23 years of recording my own videos for my classes. You may also want to watch this video recording of a workshop that Dan Laird did with Panopto. And I strongly recommend Karen Costa's book. I think it's about $20 or so, maybe a little more or less. It's available in Kindle or in paperback. And if you go to the Simple Sustainable Video podcast interview we did with Karen Costa, there is a discount code that you can use for, I believe it's 15% off. It may be 20%, but you can get a discounted price of the book if you go to the Stylus website. It's not, the discount's only available directly from Stylus. So that's a really good resource, and it has lots of tips. And she also has example videos online, which are linked to actually from the podcast we did with her. So watch some of those, think about the book, and good luck. And we'll be offering some additional workshops next week on other hints and tips for creating videos, as well as looking at some tools.